What is up, family? It's the Budget Basshead. Welcome back to the channel. Right now, what you guys are looking at is a new video that I'm putting together as a series. The series is going to be called Counting Acoustic Orders. Right now, you probably clicked on a video that said something to the tune of 6 Order Bandpass versus 6 Order Bass Reflex or something of that nature. And the reason why I named it that is because it is that questioning from one of you guys in the comment section that actually struck an idea for the video. So what do I mean by that? I previously put out a video about a tame band 3-way tower build that I was constructing, and this is what it looks like right here. If you guys would note, you have 3 different chambers here. You have the upper chamber, which is sealed for the full range driver. You have an additional chamber, which is also sealed for the mid bass driver. And then you have a third chamber down here at the rear, which is ported. Okay, but upon closer inspection of the third chamber, you will see that it actually is composed of 2 different chambers. You have a 30 Hz chamber that actually ports into a 60 Hz chamber and ports out into the open to interact with the front waves here. So why was this controversial and why did I decide to do a video about it? Well, it reminded me, well, first of all, the question that I got was from one of you guys, and you guys asked, I really hate that I didn't write the name down, but one of you guys asked or stated that this was an incorrect way to do a bandpass. And the reason why the confusion of bandpass even was mentioned in that comment is because some people have never heard of a 6th order series bass reflex. Some people have never heard of that, and for good reason, because for one, it's more naturally to hear the term 6th order series bandpass than it is to hear 6th order series bass reflex. And the reason for that is because mainly when you hear 6th order or 4th order, typically they are associated with a bandpass build. But in this case, I did not build a bandpass build, and I explained to the commenter that this is actually a bass reflex enclosure or a bass reflex portion of a 3-way build. And I'm gonna explain that in a little bit more in detail in just a minute, but for right now I just wanted to show you guys what sparked the conversation and what actually got this series rolling. So if you guys are interested in that, I will leave a screen tip there so you guys can click on it and go check that out, the previous video that is, if you guys want to get caught up on that build in particular. But for right now, what I want to ask you guys is, when it comes down to counting acoustic orders, what exactly do you know in terms of orders and what an order is? Like, what constitute an order? And when it comes down to enclosures, what exactly is it that you guys are already familiar with? What type of enclosures? Because for the most part, you may have seen something like a infinite baffle, but did you know that the infinite baffle is actually a 2nd order or a 2nd acoustic order setup? Have you even heard of a 2nd order? Another thing I want to point out is other things that you may not know, or you may know, is like, did you know that a sealed enclosure was actually a 2nd order? This is also going to be discussed in this series. Another thing, and very controversial thing, are the discussion of 3rd order enclosures. Did you even know that they existed? Did you know that there is a very popular design that is actually a 3rd order enclosure, but is never called that because of, I don't know, maybe marketing purposes or what have you? I don't really know why it's not. You probably have seen this before. This is actually a folded horn enclosure, but no one ever calls it a 3rd order enclosure. There's a reason for that. And the list goes on and on and on in this regard. Like a lot of people don't understand that when you're looking at a vented enclosure, this is actually a fourth order bass reflex. So what is the difference between a fourth order bass reflex and say a fourth order bandpass build? Some people don't know that because it's never really been prioritized to know it, or they're just accustomed to looking at certain types of enclosure. But yeah, a fourth order bandpass is the same as in regards to a sixth order bandpass is not the same as a fourth order bass reflex or a sixth order bass reflex. These are completely different types of enclosures. And that is some of the stuff that we're going to be going over in this build. In this video right here. I kind of wanted to bring this thing to light and kind of share some light on the different types of enclosures that you're gonna see and that you already have seen, but may not have fully understood what it is that you was looking at. Now, for some of you guys that's been here for a while on the channel, you guys already know I like to keep things quite simple, but just being honest with you, these series are not going to be simple at all. It's going to be some math involved in this. There's going to be a few theories thrown at you, and there are also going to be some schematics that I want you to also look at and kind of like decipher for yourself what exactly you think about these builds and how they're actually named and labeled. Because to be honest with you, what you're looking at on screen right now, an eighth order bass reflex, will make some people frown, just the name of it. Because to them, it would be no such thing as an eighth order bass reflex. Not in that naming convention, it would not be. They would not call it this. So, but you have people on the other side of the aisle that would be like, no, this is exceptionally well done and well named. This is an eighth order bass reflex. And in case you guys are wondering, like, what is this? Like, I've heard of an eighth order bandpass, but I've never heard of an eighth order bass reflex. What it all boils down to is the way that it is constructed. Okay, that's pretty much what you're looking at, is the ways that it is constructed, and what theory do you follow when it comes down to the naming of the order. What in your mind constitute an order? Do you understand? So you have first order, second order, third order, fourth order, whatever. We just got through looking at a whole bunch of different orders, but what I'm gonna jump off into right now is the naming of the order. Typically, when you're talking about naming of acoustic orders or how to count acoustic orders, you typically have two different camps on either side of the aisle. And it depends on what part or what camp you are a part of, whether you're going to look at it as being one way or the other as far as counting acoustic orders, or what I call acoustic orders. Again, some people are going to frown at me even saying acoustic orders because it's that sensitive of a topic. The verbiage that you use is very, very important to some people. Some audiophiles will talk, will hold a 24-hour conversation about just terminology alone, because to them it's that important. Whereas you have some guys that just like to simplify things, and it's not that important as long as you get the overall meaning of it. But moving on, like I said, you typically have two camps when it comes to how to even count an acoustic order. One of those camps are those who prioritize the natural roll-off of an enclosure. So what do I mean by that? A first order is typically looked at as being a 6 dB per octave roll-off of the upper or lower F3 of an enclosure. So if you just add another order to that first order, it would be a 12 dB per octave roll-off, which constitute a second order, and so forth. You can go infinitely with however many orders you want, but this is pretty much what constitute counting orders on this side of the camp. However, you have another group of people, and it's just not these two. You ask 10 different audio files, how do you constitute an order? You're probably gonna end up with 10 different answers, just being honest with you. Not saying that one is less intelligent than the other, it's just that people have their own school of thought. Now, in this case, you have those who prioritize counting acoustic storage components. Again, me saying counting acoustic storage components would probably get someone frowning again. Because what they would actually want me to say is that an order is total to the number of energy storage components, whereas the energy or the components are comparable in certain respects to masses and springs. A mass stores energy in its velocity, and a spring stores energy in displacement. That is a very simplistic way of kind of breaking that down. So what do I mean by that? A piston acting upon a volume acts like a spring. Hence, the driver, the speaker, the woofer, interchangeably I'm going to be using those words. It's always a two-order or a second order setup because it is a piston and it has mass. So what do I mean by that? If we were to go over here and actually take a look at a speaker, if you look at this speaker, the speaker actually has a suspension. To be honest with you, it actually have two different types of suspension, which constitute as Q values. But right now, we're not really getting off into Q values. We're going to get into more of that in a later video. But you do have the spider here, and you do have the surround here, and these things have a bit of resistance against a bit of resistance built into them. So if you were to take a look at the voice coil itself and just the spider, we're going to look at this mechanical suspension component and we're going to look at this electrical suspension component. These two working in tandem with one another is what was previously mentioned on the board. So if you were to take a look again over here at the speaker itself, this speaker is going to always be considered second order or having two orders, okay? Always gonna be considered that. But like I said, we came here because of the previous video that I did on this enclosure here, which was actually talking about 6-order series bandpass, and you have a versus a 6-order series bass reflex. So just for the particular purposes of you guys clicking on this title, I'm gonna jump all over those other enclosures for now, and I'm just gonna go strictly into the 6-order series versus the 6-order bass 6-order series reflex versus the 6-order bandpass build. And just know, like I said, that this is going to be a series of videos where I am going to delve off into these things in order from 2nd order all the way up to 8th order. But for right now, I don't want to make this clickbait, and I'm going to be going straight into the 6th order piece or portion of this video. So bear with me as I go down the line here and get my videos correct. So the 4th order, the 6th order bass reflex. Why is this controversial? Why do one camp look at this as being labeled correctly, and why do the other camps say no, this is not the correct way to name this enclosure? Well, in order to understand what is going on here, what we're first going to do is give an aerial view of what exactly it is that's going on. So you have the driver being placed in what seems to be a vented enclosure here. But this vented enclosure is actually venting into an additional an additional chamber here that also is ported. You see that? So this right here is actually being ported, right? Ported into another chamber, which is itself ported. Now let's look at the schematics of this. So you have the driver, right? Which we already know is always going to be 2nd order. Okay, the driver itself is always 2nd order. Now the camp that counts the different storing components would say that since this is already second order, this storage component here, this chamber, would be an additional order. The vent would be an additional order, making this fourth order. 2 plus the chamber, 3 plus the vent is 4. Then this thing goes into another chamber, which will constitute it being an additional order, which is fifth, being ported again, which would make it 6. So you would have a 6-order series bass reflex. This is not a bandpass, okay? This is not a bandpass. The front wave and the rear wave interacts through this one vent right here. A bandpass would be a bit different, whereas this front and rear wave would be encased. Let's just put it like that in simplistic terms just to move on with the video. But in this case, it is not. The front wave is actually allowed freely to flow freely. It is not encased here. You're only manipulating the rear wave here. So what do I mean by that? Now, okay, so not to make this any longer than what it has to be, the camp that count acoustical energy storing components would say yes, this get our stamp of approval as being a 6-order series bass reflex. Whereas the camp that looks at the natural roll-off of an enclosure, the camp that says no, second order only constitute a 12 dB octave per octave roll-off, right? What they would say is that 6 orders could only be bandpass. That's what they would say. So what do they mean by that? They would say that 6 order can only be bandpass because when the front wave of a 4th order bass reflex firing into an additional chamber, there is a 12 dB octave roll off, right? That's what they're gonna tell you. A 12 dB per octave roll off. Now, the thing with a double chamber reflex, which is pretty much what you have here. Which is pretty much what you have here. This is a dual chambered, right? This is a dual chamber reflex enclosure. So a dual chamber reflex enclosure, to the camp that count the dB roll-offs, to them they state that this is still considered a 4th order enclosure. So why is that? Because if you were to just look at a vented enclosure, just a simple vented enclosure, which is what this is, you would have 2 orders for the driver, you would have 1 order for the chamber, and 1 for the vent. So basically what you're doing is you're adding 2 orders here to this 2 order of the driver, hence giving you a 4th order enclosure. Over here, you're pretty much getting the same setup. They're saying that this port right here does not have a high roll off. There is no high frequency roll off in this chamber right here. The simple fact that it is ported into another chamber does not constitute it being in additional order, or in the case of how to count storage units, 2 additional orders. And I'm gonna tell you why. They say reflex, whether it be single or double, only have a roll off or 24 dB per octave below the low frequency F3, hence making it a 4th order setup. So let's look at this again. The reflex, whether it be single over here or double, still only have a 24 dB per octave roll off below the low frequency F3, meaning that those that count that count the dB roll off of the natural roll off of the enclosure, to them in their minds this would never be constituted as a 6th order bass reflex regardless of how many chambers you have on the inside of it because of the roll off. You can count how many chambers you want. This is still a 4th order bass reflex because it only still gives you a 24 dB per octave below the frequency, the low frequency F3, and it does not have a high frequency roll off. So that's telling you no, only 6 orders can be bandpass, or 8 orders, not a 6th order. Not a 4th order reflex box with multiple inner chambers. So what would be the difference between this guy and this guy? Because they're saying that they're pretty much the same thing, but if you look at the physical makeup of these, you can see that they're obviously different. So what would be the explanation that they would give? Like, is there a perk to this? Is there a pro or a con to adding an additional chamber inside what they consider a 4th order bass reflex? That's where the confusion come in at. That's where that's what makes this so controversial. Okay, so basically what they're saying is that in regards to this, all that you really are doing by adding this inner chamber here is you allowing the box to constitute a better cone control of the driver. So what do I mean by that? The major difference is that there are now 2 impedance dips rather than there being a single impedance dip of the single chamber reflex box. So you got the single chamber reflex box. If you was to look at a graph of this, you will see that it has one single impedance dip on that graph. Whereas by you putting an additional chamber here and tuning it, if you tune it properly, you will now have 2 impedance dips rather than that of a single impedance dip. So what is the pro or the perk to doing this? Again, as stated before, this enables a higher dampening of the cone at 2 separate frequencies rather than 1 frequencies, which does approve better cone control. It gives you better cone control, meaning that you have less excursions at those frequencies that you have tuned these inner chambers to. So that's the overall benefit to that camp of even adding additional chambers within this order right here, or within this enclosure right here. So to them, there is no such thing as a 6th order bass reflex. And then the other camp on the other side of the room, like, nope, you're wrong. We're counting energy storage containers, and that adds 2 additional ones to it. So that is what it is. It's a 6th order bass reflex. But I just wanted to bring this to you guys and let you make your own opinion of it. So what do you think about this? Is this considered a 6th order bass reflex, or is this considered a 4th order bass reflex? Let me know in the comment sections below. And as always, please guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment in the sections below. And until next time, it's your boy D, and I'm out.